What if I told you that being late to work isn't, a time management problem,
Right.
but it's actually a vocabulary problem?
It sounds completely absurd.
It really does sound absurd on its face. But consider this. The words you use to describe your morning commute or your packed inbox and your evening fatigue, they might actually be wiring your brain for chronic stress.
Oh, absolutely.
You wake up, you eat, you work, you sleep. For many of us, that sequence feels like an utterly mundane loop, just a banal treadmill of the exact same Tuesday, repeating endlessly.
Yeah, a total grind.
But today, we are challenging the very premise that a daily routine is just an uninspired cycle. Today, we're looking at the cognitive architecture of our daily lives.
Yeah, and the premise here rests on a concept that's adjacent to linguistic relativity.
Right.
Which is the idea that language doesn't just, reflect our reality. It actually actively constructs it.
It builds the reality.
Yeah, exactly. The repetitive nature of our days often tricks us into a state of chronic understimulation. We assume the events themselves lack weight just because we experience them so frequently.
Like, oh, it's just another morning.
Right. But the mechanism of that boredom is largely linguistic. When you process your day using really basic utilitarian terms, your brain essentially categorizes the day as basic and utilitarian.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring the concept of articulating the quotidian.
I love that phrase.
It's great, right? And by that we mean taking the everyday reality of our lives and elevating it through a highly precise advanced lexicon.
Yeah.
The goal isn't just to sound sophisticated at a dinner party. The goal is to equip you with a vocabulary that acts as a cognitive tool, something that allows you to narrate your day with a level of precision that fundamentally alters your perception of your own time.
Because the words matter.
They really do. So we are synthesizing an incredible linguistic framework today, focused entirely on refining how we describe the sequence of events that make up our mornings, our afternoons, and our evenings.
It's a full-day journey.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we accept that language shapes thought, how exactly does swapping out a phrase like, I woke up tired for something more elevated, actually change the neurochemistry of a Tuesday morning?
Well, it changes the locus of control.
Okay.
Let's look at the very first cognitive hurdle of the day, the moment the alarm rings.
Dreaded moment.
Right. The framework we are analyzing notes that a typical day might commence around, say, 6:30 a.m.
Sure.
And the immediate biological impulse is to hit the snooze button. And the conventional phrasing is exactly that, hitting snooze.
Right. I do it all the time.
We all do. But when we upgrade the lexicon, we don't just hit a button. What's fascinating here is that we succumb to the snooze button.
To succumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The linguistic distinction is profound.
Succumb is such a heavy, dramatic verb.
It really is.
It sounds like you are losing a tiny theatrical battle right there in the dark. You succumb to an illness, or you succumb to enemy forces.
Exactly.
Using it for a 6:30 a.m. alarm feels almost self-deprecating, but in a very analytical way.
Right, because it gives narrative weight to a biological necessity.
Okay.
Let's look at the mechanism of sleep inertia, that grogginess you feel when waking up.
Yeah, that awful heavy feeling.
When you say, I hit snooze, you are describing a mindless physical action. It implies a total lack of consciousness.
Just a reflex.
Yes. But the verb succumb means to fail to resist pressure or a negative force. By applying succumb, you're actively acknowledging the immense physiological pressure of sleep inertia.
Oh, I see.
You transform yourself from someone who is merely, lazy or disorganized into an individual yielding to the powerful, overwhelming allure of slumber.
That's entirely different.
It's an act of granting oneself a temporary reprieve before the alarm sounds again.
The temporary reprieve. I can already feel how that framing changes the morning. Because a reprieve is, it's a formal cancellation or postponement of a punishment.
Yes.
So it implies that waking up is a demand placed upon you by the outside world, and you are consciously choosing to delay that demand.
Exactly.
It turns a moment of weakness into a micro-negotiation with your own consciousness.
Precisely. You are naming the resistance, and once you finally overcome that resistance and rise, you enter the next phase of the morning.
Getting out of bed.
Right. Most people just call it getting ready.
Right.
But our linguistic framework refers to it as performing morning ablutions.
Ablutions, which introduces a whole element of the sacred into the bathroom.
It does.
Because ablutions refers to a ceremonial washing. The physical act is identical. You are splashing cold water on your face and brushing your teeth.
Same exact actions.
And the physical sensation of the cold water is an invigorating, sense-awakening shock to the system. But calling it ablutions instead of washing up, it just shifts the entire paradigm.
It shifts it from a chore to a ritual.
Right.
In psychology, there is a vast difference between a routine and a ritual. A routine is just a sequence of actions regularly followed. It's purely functional.
Like taking out the trash.
Exactly. But a ritual is a sequence of actions imbued with meaning.
Ah.
By framing the act of washing your face as morning ablutions, you are engaging the part of your brain that responds to structure and order.
You're signaling to yourself.
Yes, you're signaling to your nervous system that you're preparing to cross a threshold from the private restorative state of sleep into the public performative state of the waking world.
That threshold crossing is critical, and it leads right into the kitchen.
Yes, it does.
The sources we're looking at describe breakfast not just as a meal, but they introduce the concept of the perfunctory breakfast.
A great phrase.
Now, the reality of modern mornings is that breakfast is rarely a seated, serene event.
Never.
It's grabbing a slightly bruised banana and chugging a strong cup of coffee while aggressively searching for your keys.
And the word perfunctory is the linchpin here. It describes an action carried out with a minimum of effort or reflection.
Minimum effort, yeah.
It is the linguistic embodiment of cognitive automaticity.
But doesn't calling it perfunctory almost sound like an insult to the meal? I mean, it sounds so dismissive.
It would be if the goal were culinary enjoyment.
Okay, fair point.
But the goal of the morning rush is efficiency. When we just call it a quick bite, there is an underlying sense of failure.
Oh, like you didn't have time for a real breakfast.
Exactly. A subtle implication that if we were better organized, we would be having a proper meal. Quick bite implies chaos.
Right.
But perfunctory breakfast, on the other hand, implies extreme intentionality.
That is a massive distinction. So you're saying that by labeling the haste, we actually own it.
Yes.
I am not eating this banana over the sink because my life is falling apart.
No, you aren't.
I am engaging in a perfunctory meal because my cognitive load is required elsewhere, and this biological machine requires fuel.
That's the perfect way to look at it.
It frames the haste as a strategic choice rather than a personal failing.
Exactly. You are utilizing a sophisticated self-awareness to observe your own behavior. And this applies to the entire overarching process, which the framework simply calls preparing for the day ahead.
Which covers everything.
Right. This encompasses the showering, the dressing, the styling of hair, the packing of the bag. It's a 30-minute block of high-density activity.
Yeah, it's intense.
When you string these elevated concepts together, succumbing to the reprieve, performing the ablutions, consuming the perfunctory breakfast, and preparing for the day ahead, you construct what is known as a morning ritual.
And because it's a ritual, it anchors you.
It does.
You aren't just surviving the morning, you are executing a defined sequence.
Yes.
But eventually that sequence ends. The private sanctuary of the home must be left behind. Which brings us to the first major transition of the day, the journey.
And we must look at the commute not as a simple point A to point B transit, but as a liminal space.
Liminal space.
Liminality is the psychological state of being in between.
Right.
You are no longer the entirely private self of your home, but you are not yet the fully professional self of your workplace.
It's like the loading screen of the human experience.
That's a brilliant analogy.
You might be on a 20-minute bus ride, listening to a deep dive like this one to pass the time, and then, of course, you hit rush hour.
Yes, the inevitable rush hour.
The framework highlights rush hour as the peak morning and evening times when public transport is invariably packed and roads are heavily congested.
Stressful.
But what I find fascinating is how the physical environment of rush hour strips us of our agency. You are trapped in a metal box, moving entirely at the mercy of collective infrastructure.
And that loss of agency is precisely why the commute is a major source of allostatic load.
Allostatic load.
Yes, it's the wear and tear on the body that accumulates as an individual is exposed to repeated or chronic stress.
Oh, wow.
Because you are surrounded by variables you cannot control. Traffic, delays, crowded trains.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Interestingly, though, the framework juxtaposes this traditional commute with the rise of telecommuting.
Telecommuting, which is entirely different from just saying working from home.
Very different.
Telecommuting sounds like you are projecting your consciousness across a digital matrix.
Exactly.
In reality, it reduces the commute to a mere walk from the bedroom to the study.
Right.
But even that short walk requires a cognitive transition, doesn't it?
It really does. Boundary theory in psychology suggests that we need physical and temporal markers to separate our life roles.
Okay.
When the commute is eliminated, that liminal space vanishes. The transition from the home self to the work self must be manufactured entirely through language and behavior.
You have to build the boundary yourself.
Yes. But let's return to the physical commute, because it introduces one of the most stressful concepts in the quotidian experience: the predicament of being projected to arrive later than the appointed time.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Let's focus on that moment. The moment you realize you missed the first bus or the traffic is completely deadlocked.
The panic.
The heart rate spikes. The natural instinct is to text your boss and say, "I'm late."
Yes.
But our lexicon offers a brilliant alternative, running behind schedule, and this is where the cognitive science really shines.
It's so powerful.
If I say I am late, it feels like an admission of a moral defect. It's an identity statement, I am late.
Yes, exactly.
But saying I am running behind schedule fundamentally changes the architecture of the problem.
It is a masterclass in cognitive distancing.
Right.
When you declare I am late, you activate the amygdala. You are triggering guilt, shame, and a threat response. You internalize the delay as a personal failure.
Like I messed up.
Right. But the phrase running behind schedule externalizes the problem.
Because it introduces a third party, the schedule.
Precisely. A schedule is an objective external framework. It is an abstract projection of time.
Okay.
By stating you're running behind it, you are merely observing a logistical misalignment.
That's so clinical.
You are an entity whose current physical trajectory does not mathematically align with a previously agreed upon timeline.
Wow.
You maintain your professional composure because you have shifted the failure from your character to the logistics. It completely distances the individual from the emotional guilt of tardiness.
It's incredible how much armor a few syllables can provide.
It really is.
It makes you sound like a highly organized air traffic controller simply reporting on wind conditions. Due to unforeseen congestion, my arrival is running behind schedule.
Very professional.
It communicates competence in the face of delay.
You are asserting control over the flow of information, even when you lack control over the flow of traffic.
Yeah.
And you need that psychological armor, because once you navigate the commute and cross the threshold of the workplace, you are plunged into the core of the day.
The belly of the beast. The environment where our lexicon must stretch to its absolute limits, because the modern workday is defined by extremes. The framework establishes a core dichotomy right away: the hectic day versus the placid day, or a lull. Let's start with hectic.
That hectic environment is characterized by a massive amount of simultaneous demands, fractured attention, and a relentless pace.
Total chaos.
Exactly. The cognitive load is at maximum capacity. The juxtaposition to this is the placid day, a sudden, peaceful drop in the workload where very little transpires.
A lull. But here is the strange psychological paradox of the modern office. A lull rarely feels relaxing.
Oh, almost never.
If the environment suddenly becomes placid, it almost induces a state of hypervigilance. You sit at your desk, the inbox is quiet, the phone isn't ringing, and instead of enjoying the respite, you feel a deep, creeping suspicion that you have forgotten something catastrophic.
That is the dopamine system struggling to recalibrate.
Really?
Yes. In a hectic environment, your brain is saturated with stress hormones that keep you alert. When the workload drops into a lull, the sudden absence of those stress hormones creates a void.
Oh.
Your brain misinterprets the piece as a lack of necessary data, hence the hypervigilance. The phrasing matters here. If you tell yourself, "I have nothing to do," you induce anxiety.
Because it feels like a failure.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if you label the environment as a placid lull, you categorize the quiet as a temporary environmental state rather than a personal failure of productivity.
The environment dictates the terms, and nothing dictates the terms of our time quite like the way we meet.
True.
The lexicon draws a sharp distinction between protracted meetings and consecutive meetings.
Both are drains on executive function, but in entirely different ways.
Okay, how so?
A protracted meeting is one that is drawn out, persisting long beyond its usefulness. It is a slow bleed of attention.
We've all been in those.
Yes. Consecutive meetings, on the other hand, are scheduled back to back.
And the back-to-back schedule is a uniquely modern form of torture.
It really is.
You finish a video call at 10:59 and start the next one at 11:40. But what is actually happening in the brain when we jump between these consecutive contexts without a break?
You are experiencing what organizational psychologists call attention residue.
Attention residue.
When you switch from meeting A to meeting B without a cognitive buffer, a significant portion of your cognitive capacity remains stuck thinking about the unresolved issues from meeting A.
That makes so much sense.
You are physically present in the second meeting, but intellectually compromised. Consecutive meetings prevent the brain from clearing its cache.
Which is why the alternative is so highly sought after. The framework counters the meeting culture with the concept of being engrossed.
Being engrossed is the linguistic equivalent of the flow state.
Okay.
It is a period of deep, unbroken focus when you are compiling a massive report or writing code and the external world just recedes.
It's that magical state where your perception of time works. But the reality is the human brain cannot sustain that engrossed state indefinitely.
No, it can't.
The glucose demands alone are too high. Eventually, the system requires what our framework elegantly calls a brief respite and a midday repast.
Respite is a crucial term here. It doesn't just mean a break. It implies relief from something difficult or exacting.
Like surviving the morning.
Right. And midday repast is an elevated, almost aristocratic phrase for lunch.
But the reality of that midday repast in contemporary work culture is often quite grim. The sources note the prevalence of dining al desco.
Al desco.
Yeah. When you have a mere 30 minutes, so you remain tethered to your workstation, consuming a sandwich while continuing to monitor a spreadsheet.
Dining al desco is a failure of boundary management.
Really?
Yes. By not physically relocating for the brief respite, you deny the brain the environmental shift required to lower cortisol levels.
So you're not actually resting.
Exactly. The workstation remains associated with the hectic pace. However, if one navigates these hurdles, the protracted meetings, the attention residue, the al desco repast one might reach the holy grail of the workday vocabulary.
Which is making significant headway.
Making significant headway.
That phrase carries real momentum. It's the feeling of looking at a project at 4:00 p.m. and realizing you have tangibly moved the needle.
It's a great feeling.
You have achieved substantial progress before the day ends. But, as we both know, headway is never guaranteed. Often we face the opposite extreme. The framework identifies these as arduous days defined by unforeseen issues.
Arduous implies a labor that requires immense, agonizing effort.
Yeah, it sounds painful.
It is. It's steep, difficult, and exhausting. And the phrase unforeseen issues perfectly captures the unpredictable nature of complex systems.
Especially when those issues arise at the 11th hour.
Right.
The 11th hour being the classic idiom for the very last possible minute before a deadline. It's 4:55 p.m. on a Friday, and a critical server goes down or a client rejects a proposal. That is an arduous day.
Definitely.
But, I need to push back heavily on this exact point. We are talking about using elevated language to reframe our perception. Is there a danger here?
What do you mean?
Well, if a workplace is chronically understaffed, if managers are constantly generating 11th hour emergencies because of their own incompetence, and I am sitting there eating my lunch al desco every single day,
Right.
if I dress that reality up in beautiful language, saying, alas, I'm enduring an arduous day filled with unforeseen issues, am I not just putting a linguistic Band-Aid on a toxic work culture? Does this sophisticated lexicon become a tool for denial?
That is a highly perceptive critique. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, language is frequently weaponized by corporate structures to obfuscate abuse.
Like corporate jargon.
Exactly. Calling a layoff a synergy realignment, for instance. But the framework we are discussing operates on the level of the individual, not the institution.
Okay.
The purpose of adopting this lexicon is not to excuse the toxicity, but to claim authority over your experience within it.
Explain that. How does calling it arduous give me authority?
When you are trapped in a toxic environment without an adequate vocabulary, your primary experience is one of helpless overwhelm. You just feel bad.
Yeah, just stressed and awful.
You feel like a victim of a generalized chaos. But precision is a form of power.
Oh, I like that.
When you specifically label the environment as generating protracted meetings and relying on 11th hour crisis management, you are stepping back into the role of an objective diagnostician.
You're diagnosing the problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are clearly defining the mechanics of the dysfunction. You aren't masking the reality. You are sharpening its edges.
That's a great point.
That linguistic clarity is precisely what is required to formulate an exit strategy or establish rigid boundaries. You are moving from a passive receiver of stress to an active narrator of a systemic failure.
That makes perfect sense. The vocabulary doesn't make the pain go away. It makes the pain legible. It gives you the coordinates of the problem.
Exactly.
And navigating those coordinates takes a massive toll, which transitions us perfectly into the next phase of the day. As the midday repast concludes, we enter the notoriously unstable territory of the afternoon arc.
The afternoon is cognitively fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it represents a profound collision between our professional demands and our circadian biology.
It's a clash.
It is. It is a period defined by wildly fluctuating energy levels.
The sources map this out with incredible accuracy, beginning with the post-lunch slump.
The classic slump.
Right. The framework doesn't just call this being tired. It uses the phrase feeling depleted. I want to zero in on the word depleted.
Let's do it.
To me, being tired means you need to sleep, but being depleted means a resource has been entirely consumed.
Right.
It is a physical, undeniable emptiness, like a smartphone blinking at 1% battery.
The smartphone analogy is apt, but the psychological reality is even more specific. What you are experiencing is often related to ego depletion.
Ego depletion.
It's the idea that self-control and executive function draw upon a limited pool of mental resources.
Oh, interesting.
Whether you spent the morning in protracted meetings or suppressing your frustration over an 11th hour issue, you have burned through your cognitive reserves. Depleted means emptied. It is a visceral, structural reality.
But the afternoon isn't always a slump. The framework contrasts the severe depletion with its opposite, extreme feeling fruitful.
A fascinating choice of words.
It really is.
Fruitful connects the abstract nature of modern knowledge work to the highly tangible, ancient concept of the harvest.
Oh, wow.
It implies that your labor is yielding a tangible, nourishing result.
And when you are feeling fruitful, the framework suggests a specific activity tackling the backlog.
Yes.
This is the act of using a quiet afternoon to deal with pending administrative work or overdue emails. But, this phrasing always strikes me as deeply bizarre.
Why is that?
Why do we use such martial, aggressive, athletic verbs like tackling for something as profoundly mundane as an email backlog?
Right.
I mean, I am sitting in an ergonomic chair clicking a mouse. I am not a linebacker on a football field.
We use martial language for sedentary tasks as a subconscious mechanism to artificially elevate our arousal levels.
Oh, to wake ourselves up.
Exactly. Administrative backlogs are typically low stimulation, high friction tasks. They do not naturally trigger the release of dopamine or adrenaline.
They're just boring.
By framing the task as an opponent that must be tackled, we are using language to trick our nervous system into generating the focus and aggression necessary to conquer a deeply uninspiring obstacle.
We are hacking our own motivation through aggressive framing.
We absolutely are.
We are turning the inbox into a battlefield just so we can stay awake through it. That completely explains the sheer duality of the afternoon vocabulary.
Extreme.
We swing between the hyper-aggressive energy of tackling the backlog and the complete passive surrender of being utterly depleted.
And there's a third state in the afternoon arc that is entirely separate from both aggression and depletion.
Which is?
The phenomenon of losing all track of time.
Oh, right. The framework describes this as becoming so completely absorbed in an activity, perhaps reading a dense report or watching a long-form documentary, that the passage of hours goes entirely unnoticed.
This is temporal distortion.
Temporal distortion.
Yes. When you enter a state of deep absorption, the area of your brain responsible for monitoring the passage of time, which is heavily linked to the prefrontal cortex, essentially goes offline.
It just shuts down.
You transition from the aggressive commander of your inbox into a state of total cognitive surrender to the task at hand.
Wow.
The afternoon lexicon perfectly mirrors the erratic rhythm of human focus. You are either violently fighting the clock, biologically defeated by it, or transcending it entirely.
It is a total roller coaster. Although the framework does offer a social anchor amidst this cognitive whiplash,
Right.
which is catching up with. The act of taking time to update a former mentor or colleague on one's life over coffee. It is a deliberate reinsertion of the interpersonal into a day dominated by the transactional.
It acts as a grounding mechanism.
That's nice.
It reminds the individual that their identity extends beyond their capacity to tackle backlogs or survive protracted meetings. But eventually, the productive struggle of the afternoon, whether fruitful or arduous, must conclude.
Which brings us to the final major movement of our deep dive, the evening descent.
The end of the day.
This is the act of closing the curtains on the quotidian. Just as the morning required a ritual to transition into the public sphere, the evening requires a deliberate linguistic shift to transition back to the personal sanctuary.
Yes.
The framework calls the formal conclusion of these work duties wrapping up for the day.
Wrapping up is a vital psychological cue. In psychology, there is a concept known as the Zeigarnik effect.
Oh, what's that?
It dictates that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed tasks. Unfinished work creates a subconscious cognitive tension.
Like a lingering stress.
Exactly. Wrapping up implies physically and mentally securing the package of the day's labor. It is a declarative statement that the loop is closed, allowing the brain to release that tension.
And once the loop is closed, you begin the physical transition, making your way home.
Right.
And what is the very first thing almost every human being does upon successfully making their way home? They change their clothes.
Immediately.
But our framework elevates this universal behavior into a specific phrase, slipping into something more comfortable. It's the act of changing into loungewear.
This touches on the psychological phenomenon of enclosed cognition.
Enclosed cognition.
It's the systemic influence that clothes have on the wearer's psychological processes.
Okay.
The professional attire you wear carries the associative weight of the hectic day.
It feels like work.
Right. The verb slipping is critical here. It suggests a smooth, frictionless shedding of armor. You are not merely changing fabric, you are actively discarding the professional persona and the stress tethered to it.
And once you have slipped out of that armor, the reality of the day's depletion hits you. If it has been an arduous day, the mere thought of navigating a recipe, chopping vegetables, and cleaning pans is an insurmountable mountain.
Oh, completely impossible.
So, you engage in what the lexicon elegantly terms opting for a takeaway, choosing to order delivery.
This is a textbook response to decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
After a day of complex executive functioning, the brain lacks the capacity to make further multi-step decisions.
Cooking is just too many steps.
Exactly. But the phrasing is what makes it brilliant.
Yeah.
Saying, I was too exhausted to cook, so I ordered a pizza, sounds like a defeat. But opting for a takeaway frames it as an executive decision.
It sounds so much better.
Opting implies a deliberate choice from a menu of strategic alternatives. It reclaims agency in a moment of utter exhaustion.
It preserves the locus of control. But what follows dinner is perhaps the most crucial and most frequently misunderstood psychological phase of the evening.
Very misunderstood.
The framework draws an incredibly sharp line between two distinct methods of concluding the day decompressing versus winding down.
This is a vital distinction.
So, what does this all mean? This is where we need to spend some real time, because people use these interchangeably, and they shouldn't. Let's start with decompressing.
Okay.
The framework uses examples like listening to classical music, going for a run, or watching a period drama. To me, the word decompressing evokes the image of a deep-sea diver returning to the surface, or a pressure cooker violently letting off steam.
That imagery is scientifically accurate. Decompressing is an active physiological process.
Active.
Yes. Throughout an arduous day, your allostatic load increases, your cortisol is high, your sympathetic nervous system is engaged in fight or flight mode.
You're wired.
Exactly. Decompressing is the deliberate, active engagement of the parasympathetic nervous system to lower that internal pressure. You are actively metabolizing the stress hormones accumulated during the protracted meetings and the 11th hour issues.
So decompressing is about neutralizing the trauma of the day.
Yes.
But winding down feels entirely different. Winding down is not about the past day. It is about the approaching night.
That's the difference.
The framework describes it as the specific process of preparing for sleep. Switching off electronic devices, dimming the lights, brewing a cup of herbal tea. It is like a mechanical clock slowly ticking to a halt.
Exactly. Winding down is about circadian signaling.
Circadian signaling.
It is the behavioral process of prompting the pineal gland to release melatonin. The problem is that modern professionals completely conflate the two.
They mix them up.
They think that sitting on the couch, furiously scrolling through a backlog of emails while half watching a hyper-stimulating television show is a form of rest.
It's not.
It is neither decompressing nor winding down. It is simply continued cognitive taxation in a prone position.
They are bleeding their workday into their sanctuary.
Precisely. Which is why actively naming these phases is a vital psychological tool.
Right.
If you verbally declare, even just internally, I am now beginning my decompressing phase, and later I am transitioning to my wind down ritual, you construct an impenetrable impenetrable cognitive boundary.
A verbal fence.
You are building a fence around your personal time, protecting your neurological recovery from the lingering anxiety of the hectic day.
It's like casting a linguistic spell. The words make the boundary real. And the final phrase in this entire architectural structure, the words that close the narrative loop of the quotidian entirely, is turning in for the night.
Turning in. A polished, definitive idiom.
It feels very final.
It is far more intentional than simply saying, I fell asleep.
Yeah.
Falling implies an accident, a loss of control.
Right, you trip and fall.
Exactly. Turning in implies a voluntary, conscious turning away from the waking world. You have evaluated the day, completed the rituals, and are now purposefully entering the sanctuary of rest to reset the biological machinery.
It really is a massive, complex journey, isn't it?
It is a profound sequence.
When we look back at the narrative arc we've just traveled, we didn't just walk through a boring Tuesday.
No.
We started with the intense vulnerability of sleep inertia, consciously negotiating a reprieve before succumbing to the alarm. We anchored our morning with the ritual of ablutions and the strategic automaticity of a perfunctory breakfast. We braved the liminal space of the commute, utilizing cognitive distancing to navigate running behind schedule.
Exactly.
We entered the professional arena, surviving the hypervigilance of sudden lulls, the attention residue of consecutive meetings, and the intense cortisol spikes of 11th-hour issues on truly arduous days.
It's a lot.
We felt the visceral biological depletion of the afternoon arc, hacked our dopamine to tackle the backlog, and ultimately wrapped up to close the Zeigarnik loop.
Yes.
We made our way home, utilized and clothed cognition by slipping into something comfortable, asserted executive control by opting for a takeaway, deliberately decompressed our allostatic load, and finally systematically wound down to turn in for the night.
What you have just described is not a mundane loop.
Not at all.
It is a highly sophisticated, cognitively demanding navigation of the human experience. By adopting this elevated lexicon, you acquire a metacognitive toolkit.
A toolkit for your mind.
Yes. You no longer merely experience your day. You observe it, articulate it, and ultimately govern it.
It fundamentally rewires how you view the passage of time.
It does. And my challenge to the listener, my call to action for anyone who wants to actively engage with this neuroplasticity is to practice this active framing immediately.
Start right now.
The next time you're asked, how is your day? Do not fall back on the lazy, uninspired defaults of fine or busy.
Right, it was fine.
Dig into this architectural lexicon. Force your brain to categorize the experience accurately. Say, the morning was hectic, but I managed to make significant headway before the afternoon depletion set in.
Use the words to build your reality. Claim the authority over your own timeline. And that concept actually brings me to a final provocative thought that I want to leave you with. Something for you to ponder long after this deep dive concludes. We had spent this entire hour talking about the quotidian, the mundane, everyday, utterly normal events of a basic Tuesday. And we have explored the cognitive science of how consciously choosing an advanced, highly precise lexicon can totally reframe how we process a stressful commute or a frustrating inbox.
It provides distance and control over the minor irritations.
Exactly. So here's the ultimate question. What would happen if we applied this exact same linguistic elevation, this same rigorous cognitive framing to the absolute extremes of our lives?
Wow.
To the way we describe our deepest heartbreaks, our most devastating professional failures, or our most profound grief.
That's a fascinating leap.
If finding the perfectly sophisticated words can mathematically lower our cortisol during a chaotic afternoon at the office, could applying that same linguistic precision to our worst traumas actually strip those traumas of their chaotic power over us?
It's a profound thought.
Does mastering the language of our deepest pain act as the ultimate cognitive distancing, allowing us to finally close the loop, wrap up the past, and turn in for the night? Just something to think about.
This raises an important question. The words we choose are truly the architects of our own resilience.
And on that note, we are going to wrap up for the day. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the quotidian, and we will see you on the next deep dive. You know, if you really think about it, the standard work week is, well, it's a lot like a highly choreographed, incredibly rigid dance.
Oh, absolutely. Every single step is mapped out.
Right. Every movement is planned well in advance for you. Like your morning alarm clock acts as the metronome, setting the tempo at exactly 6:30.
Yeah, and then your commute is the opening number.
Exactly.
Ah.
Everyone moving in these predictable, synchronized, almost hypnotic lanes of traffic.
You know your place in the formation.
You really do.
Yeah.
You have your 9 a.m. stand-up meetings, your 12:30 lunch breaks, those precisely scheduled blocks of afternoon productivity. You know exactly where to stand, you know the rhythm, and you know what the music is telling you to do.
Right. It's entirely prescribed.
But then you hit Friday evening, and suddenly, without warning, the music just completely stops.
It just drops out.
Right. The weekend begins, and you are thrown into this sudden, entirely unscripted freestyle session.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people, honestly.
Oh, totally. How do we even make sense of that sudden lack of structure? And that is exactly our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into the psychology behind that exact transition.
And we have a fantastic source for this.
We do. We are basing today's deep dive on a really fascinating piece of source material. It's a C2 advanced English practice text, and it's titled Articulating the Art of Unstructured Time.
It's a great read.
It really is. But I want to be clear for you listening right now, our goal here isn't to just sit and learn vocabulary. We are taking the advanced linguistic tools this text provides and using them as a mirror.
Yes, to deeply examine how we perceive, how we manage, and ultimately how we reflect upon our free time.
Exactly. Because the words we use reveal so much about what's going on in our heads.
They do. And this text is the perfect lens for this kind of analysis, because the authors basically frame the language of the weekend as a profound study in juxtaposition.
A juxtaposition between the week and the weekend.
Exactly. It's presented as the natural, chaotic counterpart to the quotidian.
The quotidian being the daily, mundane weekday routine you just described.
Right. And what this text brilliantly highlights is that we possess a very specific, highly elevated lexicon to describe this transition. We use specialized language to talk about exiting our routines, pursuing leisure, and managing our personal time.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand the weekend, the source argues that we have to start at the exact moment it begins.
The Friday precipice.
The wonderful, tension-filled precipice of Friday afternoon. Before we can even talk about what we do on a Saturday, we must examine the threshold we cross to get there.
Yeah, the transition period.
Right. The source text begins by analyzing the universal feeling of a Friday afternoon, and specifically, the really sophisticated ways we express that anticipation.
And this is where the text immediately shifts away from basic expressions. Like a beginner might just say, I am happy it is Friday.
Which is true, but a bit flat.
Exactly. But the source elevates this emotion by introducing the phrase, relishing the thought of the upcoming weekend.
Relishing, that's a great word.
It completely alters the psychological weight of the sentence. Because relishing is an active, intensely sensory verb.
It makes you think of food, right?
Yes. It implies savoring a complex taste or anticipating something utterly delicious. When you say you are relishing the thought of unstructured time, you are signaling a psychological hunger.
Wow.
It illustrates how we crave time off in the exact same way a starving person might anticipate a banquet.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. We aren't just looking forward to the weekend, we are practically salivating over the idea of simply having sovereignty over our own hours.
We are starved for it.
We really are. But then the source moves into the anatomy of the ending itself, like how we describe the final moments of Friday. There is a phrase used in the text's dialogue, the work week draws to a close.
Ah, yes. Draws to a close.
Now, I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least question the premise.
Sure. Go ahead.
Does the elegance of the phrase draws to a close romanticize what is actually happening?
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because when I think of Friday afternoon, I am usually frantically firing off emails at 4:59, trying to clear my desk, staring at a mountain of unread messages.
It's not exactly graceful.
No. It doesn't gently draw to a close like a velvet curtain slowly coming down at an opera. For most of us, it crashes into a brick wall.
That is a brilliant critique of the phrase. And I think the source text actually anticipates that inherent contradiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because immediately after offering draws to a close, the text introduces an alternative, much more visceral way to frame the Friday feeling.
Okay, what is it?
It talks about experiencing a palpable sense of relief because you are finally on the home stretch.
Oh, the home stretch. Yeah, we use that all the time.
I do. But what's fascinating here is how the idiom home stretch completely reframes our baseline relationship with our careers.
How so?
Well, think about where the term comes from. The home stretch is derived from horse racing or track and field. It is that final, agonizing straightaway right before the finish line.
Right. It's that moment in the race where you are completely exhausted, your lungs are burning, your legs feel like lead, but you know you just have to push through the pain for one more minute.
Precisely. By using the phrase home stretch to describe Friday afternoon, we are fundamentally viewing the standard work week as an arduous race or a grueling task.
An endurance event.
Exactly. It's an event that we must merely survive.
Yeah.
Because, think about it. You would never say you are on the home stretch of a fantastic vacation.
No, definitely not.
Or the home stretch of a wonderful dinner with friends. You only use that idiom for tasks that require grit and suffering.
That is so true.
So linguistically, we are basically admitting to ourselves that the week is a gauntlet we run, and our primary goal is simply to survive until we cross the finish line of 5 o'clock.
Man, that is bleak. And when you finally cross that finish line, the physical reaction is undeniable. The text uses the phrase palpable sense of relief, which means the relief is so thick, so real, that you can practically touch it in the air.
You can physically feel the tension leave your shoulders.
Exactly. You have survived the gauntlet. But here is the paradox. The moment we get the freedom we were just relishing, our brains instantly try to recreate the environment we just escaped.
It's the great irony of the weekend.
It really is. Once we cross that Friday finish line, the weekend splits into a massive dichotomy. The source points out that for a huge portion of the population, the weekend isn't actually a break at all.
Not even slightly.
It is just an alternate form of work.
It is the great productive illusion. We transition out of our professional jobs only to immediately clock into our domestic jobs.
Yes.
And the text captures this beautifully by introducing a remarkably modern piece of vocabulary, which is life admin.
Oh, life admin might literally be my favorite concept in this entire document.
It's so accurate.
Right. In the source's dialogue, one of the speakers, Emma, talks about how she spent her Saturday morning tackling a mountain of life admin that she had been putting off.
She even refers to these tasks as the necessary evils of a weekend.
Necessary evils. We are talking about paying the electricity bill, scheduling a dentist appointment, filing insurance paperwork, maybe organizing the pantry.
Which is what previous generations would have simply called doing chores.
Exactly, but we do not call them chores anymore. Think of life admin as a psychological Trojan horse.
I like that analogy.
We wrap the menial drudgery of folding laundry and paying a water bill in this shiny, high-status armor of corporate efficiency.
We do. We've taken the language of the office administrative work, admin, and aggressively applied it to our private domestic existence.
It's wild when you think about it.
By calling it life admin, we elevate personal tasks to the level of executive management. We trick our exhausted brains into caring about these tasks by framing them as high-level managerial duties.
So you aren't just a person scrubbing a sink.
No, you are the CEO of your household executing critical administrative functions.
It is a profound coping mechanism entirely encoded into our vocabulary. If you call it a chore, it feels menial. It feels like drudgery.
Right, but if you call it admin, it feels professional, structured, and, well, necessary.
It justifies the fact that you are spending your precious, highly anticipated, unstructured time performing unpaid labor.
Exactly. But the language of this productive weekend goes even deeper than just corporate speak.
Yeah.
Notice the verbs the source text pairs with these activities.
Oh, right, like tackling. Emma says she spent the morning tackling a mountain of life admin. I love looking at this because tackling makes paying your internet bill sound like an extreme sport.
It really does.
You don't just do your taxes, you tackle them. It sounds like you are on a rugby pitch, physically launching yourself at a difficult opponent. You are wrestling this mountain of paperwork to the ground.
It is the language of combat and conquest. We are transforming domestic maintenance into a battlefield.
It's intense.
It is. And the text offers another phrase that elevates the mundane in a slightly different direction. It suggests that you might spend your Saturday attending to various errands.
Attending to various errands? Wow, that is incredibly formal.
It takes the simple act of driving to the grocery store to buy milk and transforms it into a deliberate, almost diplomatic mission.
You aren't just popping down to the shops. You are attending to the matter. It gives you the gravitas of an ambassador.
It formalizes the informal, granting weight and importance to our domestic movements. And the source actually takes this formalization one step further.
Okay, where does it go?
It points out that when you have a long list of tasks, you might describe yourself as having a myriad of household obligations to fulfill.
Obligations to fulfill, that feels heavy.
We need to pause on the subtle weight of that specific phrasing. The text specifically highlights the verb fulfill instead of a simpler verb like do or complete.
Right, because when you fulfill an obligation, you are suddenly speaking the language of legal contracts.
Yes, binding duty. Like you're fulfilling the terms of a legal mandate or a corporate contract.
Which changes everything.
Precisely. By using that phrasing, you are introducing a profound sense of binding duty into your personal days off. You are subconsciously telling yourself that maintaining your life is a strict contractual obligation that you are bound by law or honor to execute.
So you are no longer a free agent enjoying the unstructured time you relished on Friday afternoon.
No, you are a contractor, legally bound to fulfill the terms of your domestic existence.
It completely shatters the illusion that the weekend is purely free time. Half of it is strictly governed by the physical combat of tackling tasks and the legalistic pressure of fulfilling obligations.
That is the first half of the dichotomy. The weekend as a theater for unpaid labor, dressed up in the language of corporate management, physical combat, and contractual duty.
So what about the second half? Because the source does acknowledge that eventually the life admin is defeated.
The mountain is conquered.
The obligations are fulfilled and we actually attempt to rest.
Yes. The text pivots to the other side of the weekend equation, the period supposedly dedicated entirely to leisure and recuperation.
But here is what I found so striking about this section. The language the Sork provides to describe this purely restful state is incredibly unnatural.
How do you mean?
Well, when you think about organic human rest, you think of sleeping, breathing, maybe walking slowly through a forest.
Natural things.
Right. But the text highlights a very specific modern concept for disconnecting from work. And the primary verb they focus on is to unplug.
Yes. Unplugging from work-related correspondence.
Right. And the source explicitly draws attention to the strong visual image of this disconnecting a physical plug from an electrical socket to stop the flow of power.
A very mechanical metaphor.
Exactly. But we aren't lamps. We aren't toasters or televisions. Why are we using this intensely mechanical metaphor for human leisure?
It's a great question.
It implies that during the Monday through Friday grind, we are physically plugged into a massive power grid of corporate productivity. Like we have electricity constantly surging through our veins, and the only possible way to stop the current is to physically yank the cord out of the wall.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a fascinating and perhaps slightly disturbing societal shift.
Disturbing is a good word for it.
Because the text complements unplug with another major idiom for rest, which is recharging one's batteries.
Oh, we say that constantly.
We do. The text gives the example of spending a quiet Sunday recharging my batteries before the week ahead. We are using strictly mechanical and technological metaphors to describe biological human recovery.
Like we're just gadgets.
We talk about ourselves as if we are complex machinery or smartphones that have been drained down to 2% battery life, and we must be plugged into a charging port just to function.
I hear the battery metaphor, and I understand how it sounds like we are commodifying ourselves, but let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Please do.
What if we use these mechanical metaphors not because we view ourselves as corporate commodities, but because machines are incredibly reliable, and we desperately want to feel reliable in a chaotic world?
That's an interesting angle.
Right. A battery is simple. It drains, you plug it in, it fills back up, it works again. Human psychology is messy. Burnout is complicated. Maybe we say recharge my batteries because it gives us a false sense of control over our own exhaustion.
That is a very compelling counterargument. It acts as a defense mechanism against human frailty. If exhaustion is just a low battery, then the solution is simple and guaranteed. Just plug in and rest.
Exactly.
But we must also consider what that implies about the purpose of the rest. According to this language, we are not resting because rest is a beautiful, inherent human right.
Oh, I see where you're going.
We are resting so that our batteries have enough power to operate the machinery of the work week on Monday morning. The rest serves the work. It is purely battery management for future productivity.
Wow, that is a heavy realization. We are conceptualizing ourselves as androids performing routine weekend maintenance so our internal processors don't overheat on Tuesday.
Pretty much. And the source text doesn't just stop at how we describe resting. It also looks at how we linguistically elevate our actual hobbies and leisure activities.
Because once we are supposedly unplugged, what do we actually do with our time?
Right. The text notes that many people use the weekend to indulge in a pastime. It mentions activities like landscape photography or gardening, and it specifically points out that the word indulging suggests taking great pleasure in an activity.
But the word indulge is so loaded.
It really is.
Think about how we use that word in other contexts. You indulge in a massive slice of rich chocolate cake. You indulge in a ridiculously expensive spa day. To indulge implies that you are partaking in something luxurious, something slightly decadent, or even something a little bit naughty.
Something outside the norm.
Yeah. By saying we indulge in a pastime, we are framing our own hobbies, things that should be a normal, healthy part of a well-rounded human life, as a luxury.
Exactly. It suggests that enjoying oneself is a rare treat. It is an indulgence, an exception to the rule, rather than the baseline expectation of human existence.
It frames joy as something we are getting away with, rather than something we are entitled to.
And the formalization of our free time gets even more pronounced when we talk about seeing other human beings.
Oh, this part drove me crazy.
The source notes that weekends are for socializing, but instead of just saying I'm meeting friends, it introduces the phrase social engagements.
Social engagements.
Yes, it offers the example of having a couple of social engagements this weekend, including a dinner party on Saturday.
I mean, think about it. If my best friend called me up and asked if I wanted to have a social engagement at the local pub on Saturday afternoon, I would assume they had been kidnapped and replaced by a corporate HR representative.
It sounds so sterile.
Why do we calendarize serendipity? We formalize hanging out with our friends into official appointments. Even our pure leisure, the time that is supposed to be that unscripted freestyle dance, is linguistically structured as an official event on an itinerary.
It's bizarre.
We just can't seem to escape the desperate need to manage and structure our time, even when we are supposed to be completely off the clock.
Well, it speaks to our deeply ingrained psychological need for order. We attempt to control the terrifying, unstructured expanse of the 48-hour weekend by compartmentalizing it.
We build a schedule.
We build a rigid architecture. Here is my life admin block. Here is my battery recharging phase. Here are my scheduled social engagements. We build this intricate structure to make the freedom feel manageable.
But as anyone who has actually lived through a weekend knows, the architecture always falls apart.
Always.
Life rarely sticks to the itinerary. And that brings us to the next massive concept the source explores. We try so hard to structure our weekend with admin and engagements, but life is fundamentally full of unexpected turns.
Which is unavoidable.
Exactly. What happens to our sophisticated language and our psychology when our unstructured time suddenly rebels against our carefully laid plans?
This is where the vocabulary provided by the text becomes incredibly vibrant and revealing. It introduces phrases specifically designed for the breakdown of order, starting with the reality of a last-minute change of plans.
Here's where it gets really interesting because, well, a change of plans is the gentle, polite way to phrase it.
Right.
But the source quickly brings out the heavy artillery. It notes that if a change was disruptive or ruined a schedule, you would say it threw a wrench in the works.
Such a great idiom.
It gives the scenario of a sudden rainstorm throwing a wrench in the works for a beautifully planned outdoor picnic.
Threw a wrench in the works.
Yeah.
It is a marvelously descriptive phrase. And notice the underlying imagery here. We are right back to machinery.
The human as machine, part 2.
Indeed. In this specific idiom, the works refers to the gears, cogs, and pulleys of a smoothly functioning machine.
Right.
Your carefully planned weekend, your strategically balanced admin, your scheduled rest periods, your timed social engagements. That is the machine operating at peak efficiency.
And the sudden rainstorm or the canceled babysitter or the flat tire
Is a heavy metal wrench violently hurled into those delicate spinning gears. The machine shudders, sparks fly, and it grinds to a complete halt. The plan is destroyed.
In the dialogue section of the text, Emma mentions that her evening plans went awry, which is a fantastic word meaning amiss or off course, and that a canceled engagement threatened to throw a wrench in the works.
Right. She felt the machine breaking.
But I want to throw a conceptual wrench into our own discussion right now.
All right, Ed.
Is a wrench in the works always a bad thing?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because if we spend our entire Monday through Friday functioning like highly efficient, predictable machines on a corporate conveyor belt of productivity,
Yeah.
and then we spend our weekends trying to make our personal lives function like well-oiled machines too, Maybe the wrench is exactly what we need. Maybe a canceled plan, a sudden downpour, or a massive disruption is the only possible way we actually get to experience true, unstructured freedom. Like the machine literally has to break for the authentic human being to emerge.
That is a profound interpretation.
Yeah.
And it aligns perfectly with how the source text actually pivots in this section. Yes, because it immediately clarifies that not all unexpected events, not all wrenches are negative. Sometimes the complete breakdown of the itinerary allows for something beautiful and organic to occur. The text introduces the phrase serendipitous encounter.
Serendipitous. It is just a beautiful word to say out loud.
It is. It refers to something occurring by chance in a happy or beneficial way. And the text pairs this with the concept of an impromptu gathering.
Impromptu.
Meaning an event done entirely without being planned, organized, or rehearsed.
Which is the exact opposite of a social engagement.
Exactly.
And this is exactly what happens in Emma's dialogue. She notes that her rigid social engagement was canceled, the wrench was thrown, the machine broke, but because her schedule was suddenly unexpectedly empty, it turned into a serendipitous evening.
Right.
She ended up having an impromptu dinner with some neighbors they had been meaning to get to know better.
The irony is incredibly rich. She had a formalized social engagement that failed, and the very failure of that structure allowed for a genuine, organic human connection, an impromptu dinner.
It's poetic, almost.
It is. The text is subtly arguing that while we desperately crave structure and we try to manage our free time with life admin and strict itineraries, the true magic of the weekend often lies in the chaos.
In the unplanned moments.
Yes, it lies in the serendipity. It is the impromptu moments, the unrehearsed, unscripted moments that actually provide the most profound sense of genuine leisure and community.
Because you cannot schedule serendipity. If you put serendipitous encounter on your calendar for 3:15 on Saturday, it ceases to be serendipitous.
Precisely. It becomes an engagement.
The wrench is a gift. The wrench breaks the relentless clockwork of our lives so you can actually just sit around a table with your neighbors, talk, and completely lose track of time. You can only experience it if you leave the space for the machine to break.
But inevitably, whether your weekend was meticulously scheduled with life admin or beautifully disrupted by serendipitous chaos and impromptu dinners, the clock never stops ticking.
Sadly, no.
Sunday evening inevitably approaches, the sun starts to set, and the unstructured time begins to evaporate.
You are standing on the precipice on the other side of the canyon. The Sunday scaries start to creep in.
Exactly. The final major transition the source explores is the Monday post-mortem. It looks at how we take the messy, chaotic, multifaceted reality of a 48-hour weekend and summarize it for our colleagues when we are back on the clock.
Because we all know this exact scenario.
Oh, definitely.
It is Monday morning. You are standing in the break room waiting for the coffee machine to warm up, and a colleague walks in and asks, "How was your weekend?"
The universal question.
Right. And you have approximately 10 seconds to give a socially acceptable, easily digestible answer. You cannot give them a 20-minute philosophical breakdown of your serendipitous encounters, your combat with life admin, and the industrialization of your leisure time.
They would look at you like you were crazy.
They really would.
You need a summary. You need a neat package. And the text provides the sophisticated linguistic tools designed for this exact corporate ritual. It suggests using transitional phrases like all in all or on reflection to provide a neat summary. For example, all in all, it was a very restorative weekend.
Those phrases, all in all and on reflection, act as this perfect little neat bow. They are verbal packaging.
That's a great way to put it.
They take the sprawling, chaotic reality of chores, rest, canceled plans, family arguments, and impromptu dinners, and they aggressively compress them into a tidy, non-threatening soundbite for corporate consumption. All in all, it was good.
In the text, one of the speakers, John, utilizes this packaging perfectly. When asked about his weekend, he summarizes it by describing it as tranquil and idyllic.
Tranquil and idyllic. Nice words.
He states that he made a conscious, deliberate effort to recharge his batteries. And because of that mechanical maintenance, when asked if he is ready for the week ahead, he replies, on reflection, yes. I feel prepared to get back into the swing of things.
Get back into the swing of things. That is such a ubiquitous idiom. We say it all the time without thinking.
We do.
But think about the underlying physics of that imagery. It is the imagery of a heavy pendulum. The work week swings forcefully one way, The weekend swings back the other way. The rhythm is restored. The metronome we talked about at the beginning is ticking again.
Back to the tempo.
By saying he is ready to get back into the swing of things, he is signaling to his colleague that his weekend maintenance is complete, his batteries are back at 100%, and the corporate machine is ready to resume normal, synchronized operation.
It is the ultimate language of compliance. The individual has been successfully recalibrated for the collective.
Wow.
But there is one final phrase in the source text vocabulary list that I find to be the most revealing and perhaps the most somber of all.
Okay.
It is a phrase that carries an immense amount of sociological and psychological weight.
I think I know exactly the phrase you're talking about. It's the phrase used to describe an afternoon of gardening. The speaker calls it a much-needed respite.
Yes. The text defines respite very clearly. It says, respite is a short period of rest or relief from something difficult or unpleasant. And it provides the classic example. The long weekend was a much-needed respite from the daily grind.
A short period of relief from something difficult or unpleasant.
This raises an important question. What does it say about our modern human existence if we universally, casually accept the weekend as a respite?
It implies something incredibly heavy about how we view our own lives.
It does. If the weekend is merely a respite, a brief, fleeting period of relief from the unpleasant, it heavily implies that the baseline human experience during the week is one of inherent hardship.
That the default is suffering.
Yes. It suggests that our default state of living is endurance or the daily grind, and the weekend is just a temporary pause in that suffering before we are forced to shoulder the heavy burden all over again.
It is the linguistic equivalent of taking a desperate gasp of air before diving back underwater. You aren't meant to live on the surface. The surface is just a brief respite from holding your breath in the crushing depths. That is a radically different way of viewing our lives than, say, viewing the work week as a fulfilling period of contribution and purpose, and the weekend as a joyful period of celebration.
It's a completely different paradigm.
By culturally adopting the word respite, we are linguistically trapping ourselves in a narrative of endless endurance. The week is the punishment, and the weekend is simply the parole.
And that realization is the true power of analyzing this specific source material. By dissecting the intricate fabric of authentic high-level English, we uncover the invisible cultural architecture beneath the words. We don't just learn how to speak with more sophistication. We learn exactly what those sophisticated words are hiding from us.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We started this deep dive by looking at the weekend as a freestyle dance, a much-anticipated break from the rigid choreography of the work week. But as we've walked through this lexicon of transition, admin, and rest, we've seen that it isn't really a freestyle at all.
We simply swap one strict structure for another.
Right. We have seen how the language we use reveals our deep, often highly conflicted psychological relationship with our own time off. We disguise our unpaid domestic chores in the high-status corporate combat gear of tackling life admin.
We certainly do.
We conceptualize our physical and mental exhaustion using the cold industrial machinery of unplugging and recharging our batteries. We formalize our deepest friendships into rigid social engagements, and we panic when a wrench is thrown in the works, until we inevitably realize that the chaos of the broken machine might actually be the only way to find the serendipitous connection we were craving all along.
And then we tie all of that messy human experience up with a neat, corporate-friendly bow on Monday morning, declaring it a much-needed respite before swinging like a compliant pendulum back into the daily grind.
The language is undeniably sophisticated, yes, but the reality it describes is an incredibly delicate, often exhausting balancing act.
Which brings us perfectly to the community challenge that the source text poses at the very end of its lesson.
Oh, yes, I love this part.
The source ends with a direct question aimed at the reader, and I think it is the perfect challenge to pass on to you today. It asks, how do you typically strike a balance between productivity and leisure on your weekends? Do you dedicate one day entirely to life admin and the other to repose? Or do you weave both into each day?
It is a phenomenal question to ask yourself. Think about your own Saturday morning. When you woke up today, did you look at your to-do list and think of it as a burden? Or did you subconsciously put on your life admin executive suit?
Are you a strict compartmentalizer, separating the combat of chores from the machinery of rest? Or are you a weaver, letting the obligations and the serendipity blur together?
Furthermore, I would challenge you to take these phrases out into the real world. In your next conversation, when a colleague asks how your weekend was, challenge yourself to consciously use the phrase, much-needed respite, or mention that you tackled a mountain of life admin.
Notice the impact it has.
Exactly. Notice how it changes the dynamic of the conversation, how your colleague reacts to the formality, and most importantly, notice how using those specific words makes you feel about the time you just spent.
It's an eye-opening experiment.
It really is. And as you go about the rest of your week, I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over. The text teaches us that we use the weekend to recharge our batteries so we are fully prepared to get back into the swing of things on Monday.
Right.
But based on all these mechanical, industrial idioms we've unpacked today, we have to ask ourselves a very hard question. Are we actually enjoying our weekends as vibrant, free, unpredictable humans?
Or have we just been culturally conditioned to perform routine maintenance on ourselves?
Exactly. Are we making sure our battery is charged and our gears are oiled purely so we can be more efficient, productive workers when that alarm clock metronome starts ticking again on Monday morning? Are we actually dancing, or are we just plugging ourselves into the wall?
A profoundly important question to take with you into your next period of unstructured time.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the lexicon of leisure. We hope you found some serendipity in our conversation today and that you take a moment to truly relish your next break.
Until next time, keep questioning the words you use.
Goodbye, everyone.